fantastisch warm applaus. Hier is Stephen B. Scott. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
How are you?
I'm doing great. It's been wonderful.
You actually live here in Antwerp.
I do, but do not ask me to speak Dutch yet. I've been lazy. Okay, everybody here speaks English so well. This gentleman right here, I was like, man, I would not be able to know where you were from. And then I heard him break into the Flemish, and I was like, oh yeah, he's got it. I wish I spoke it so I could actually hear his comedy act, because I hear he's fantastic.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. But of course, you are fantastic. That's true. You are fantastic.
I don't know what stories you heard about me, but no.
I heard a lot of stories about you, but only good ones.
Okay.
So, could you tell us, for the people who maybe don't know you, what you exactly do?
Right. Okay, I'm not one of those handsome actors that are in here that are amazing that you've seen in Lord of the Rings or Indiana Jones, but I've drawn them, sort of. I'm at least working on Indiana Jones. I'm a comic book artist. And what that means to anybody, it's not just doing the pinups or doing covers. I take the scripts from the writers and convert that into the images that make comics. So I turn it into the story. So I get to work as like the acting director, set designer, and sort of actor. There's times that I make silly photos of myself to do a reference shot. I've been She-Hulk before, while I was working on She-Hulk. It's hard to explain. Don't look at me and think, how did you do that? I know you're looking at me thinking, how did you do that?
Exactly. And you're not making it any better by saying, I can't ask you.
No, okay. Anyway, ask me if you want to. Okay. The story's interesting. But anyway, that's what I do. I draw I convert from the stories and convert it into, and I'm working even on a Judge Dredd right now that I've written myself. Because a while back I worked on Judge Dredd for IDW Comics, but I want to do the Judge Dredd in the UK, 2018. But I've got other projects going on. I'm working in the Doctor Who universe. And I've worked with my good friend Mark Ryan. And the reason why Mark Ryan is coming on here, I've worked with him on a project called The Pilgrim, which is absolutely outstanding and fantastic. Now, Mark talked earlier, and he probably didn't talk about the graphic novel, but we got the graphic novel here, and it's working also with artist Mike Grell. So, look at how look how Mark Ryan segued for you.
I have to tell you first, he talked about you, and he was saying very nice things about you. So I don't know how much you paid him, but he was saying like really nice things.
We handsome, bald-headed guys gotta stick together. Anyway,
what do you say? We call him on stage?
Why don't we do that?
We'll do it.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, give a warm applause for Mr. Mark Ryan.
Cat-like race. Did you see how we leapt up those stairs?
Cat-like race. Now let's be careful going down.
Oh, God.
Let's be careful going
At
down.
my age, everything's creaking like crazy, isn't it? Hello, chaps. Again, how are you all? What are you all doing about me?
That would be our bedroom at this time.
That's correct.
Oh my.
Oh my.
Oh my.
Joystick K. Yeah, who's a Joystick K fan? Is anybody a Star Trek fan? Do you know what? We went on if you go dive into this, we went on a Star Trek cruise once. And I got invited, don't ask me why, it's a long story. And they said to me, they were going to do a concert, it's absolutely true. And they said, we're going to do a concert with you. We heard that you've sung, you did like most of the musicals. I said, sure. Would you sing something? I said, sure, no problem. Well, worse than that, what it is. They said, we're trying to get George to sing, but he won't sing at all. He just says he can't sing. So I said, leave it to me. So I went to George and said, George, they've asked us to sing at the concert. I said, I've never sung in my life and I'm really nervous about it. And I said, if you don't sing, I know it'll be fine. So if you sing, I'll sing. And he went, oh my, would I can't believe it. I said, what could you sing? What would you sing? Oh, I don't know. Sing it from a show or something. I said, well, what sort of thing? He went, oh, this was a real nice club. So to the thing, I said, come over here. I said, what key do you think you might be? He said, well, why don't you come to the piano? So we got George up the piano. And the bloke was vamping. This was only a last clapping. feel so bad about myself. So he got up and he sang, this was a real nice campaign, and it was unique in many ways, musically, it's an experience, but he did it. And then I sang My Funny Valentine, which I actually knew very well. And I was able to do one afterwards, he went, yo, and I got him up to sing. So the only time he's ever sung at a Star Trek convention was because I conned him into doing it.
Did he do it in his George Takei role?
He did. And he told me a great story about Jimmy doing it as well.
And look, after William Shatner has done Rocket Man and such, you know, it gives room for anyone to do anything. You do know, you remember the Rocket Man, right?
That one, and if a picture, it's 1,000 words. I remember looking at it going, oh, how could you possibly do this?
So you wouldn't get me out singing because when you said, let's go see what key we're going to do this in, I'd be like, what is that? So, but if you get me drunk enough, I'll do karaoke.
Jimmy,
It's all Adam Sandler, Ode to My Car, and At a Medium Pace. Look it up. Don't look it up now. You might even find me doing that.
sorry, we should take down the Q&A, guys. Have you got a question?
Yeah, all right. I have
A real question.
Sorry about that. I apologize.
I have a real question for you guys. We want to know everything about the film crew. How did you guys end up meeting each other? Did you know each other?
It should start at the creator. Go.
Well, the true start of people told you this. I used to do, anybody know what psychic questioning is? Have you ever heard what psychic questioning is? There was a group, Andy Collins, he now does a lot of ancient aliens. Now, if you've ever watched Ancient Aliens and those shows, Andy's one of the guys that has done a lot of research into ancient aliens and psychic research. And he used to have a group that used to find lost historical artifacts by using psychics. And they literally, and they actually found what was called the seven swords of Leonia that were made for Mary Queen of Scots. I'm not making this up, there's a book called the Seven Swords. And he literally had these psychics that these swords were made by Mary Queen of Scots and hidden all over England in some of the bizarrest places. Anyway, he used the psychics to locate them. And they got all seven swords. Don't ask me how they found them, but they did. He's got all of them. And he found them, some were buried in brick walls, literally, some were lost. He got them anyway. So I got invited out and I was interested to see what they were doing and how they were doing it. They've done very interesting things regarding Gawain the Green Knight and all kinds of stuff. So one day, one of the very talented psychics that he worked with, his name was David. I'll just say that, I won't say it more, I'll just say his name was David. He came up to me, we just sat there, I can't remember what we were doing something. And he said, do you know the name Colonel Gibson? And I said, I'm saying that I don't think I do. He said, he'd like to talk to you. And I said, well, give him my cell phone, give me a call or something, I'll give you a cell phone. He said, I can't really do that. I said, well, why not? Just give me the number, get him to give me a call, we'll have a chat, find out what it's about. He said, no, you don't understand, he's dead. And I went, he's what? He said, no, he's dead. He died in 1943. And he wants to talk to you. And I went, okay. And I found it a way in the back of my brain, although the many, many strange experiences like that I had in this world. Put it in the box, didn't think anyone about it for several years. Until I was working with the British Army. And suddenly we were looking at the history of psychic warfare during World War II and deception operations and stuff like that. And it turned out, I discovered, that Colonel Kim Seymour was one of the people that was tasked by Winston Churchill, no less, with the London controlling section to actually wage magic war on the SS, particularly in England, because they believed they were a cult organisation and they believed they could affect them. Now the real purpose of it was to disguise the fact that we were reading their radio traffic. We cracked the enigma codes. So they came up with an idea that they'd convince England that we weren't reading their radio traffic, we were actually reading their minds. And they believed it. And Colonel Kim Seymour was one of the pivotal, he got Alistair Crowley, if any of these names mean anything to you, but Aleister Crowley, all the famous magicians and occultists in Britain to wage magic warfare on the Nazis. It's the origins of the Raiders of the Lost Ark story.
I was about to say, this is very Raiders of the Lost Ark.
This is not what it is, which John and I were just talking about. And the actual organisation that did it, that actually was looking for the Lost Ark, was called the Ananem. And the Ananem went around the world, they got the Spear of Longinus, they were looking for the Lost Ark. They were looking for anything that would help empower the Nazi army. So, I'm looking into this, and some years later I was fascinated to find out, well, where is he buried? And I managed to find out where he was buried. He was buried in secret because he died in 1943. And he died in the middle of an actual ritual where they were actually engaging who they believed were the Nazi sorcerers in battle, somewhere out there in the universe. And he died of a cerebral hemorrhage, and he dropped dead in the middle of one of these. So the rumor was that the Nazi didn't kill him, psychic. So, but they buried him in secret. This is absolutely true. So I spent, I don't know, quite a while trying to find out where he was buried, because he was also very obscure. I found out the cemetery where he was buried. And I went to the cemetery. There was a little old lady, Irish lady behind the thing where the registration was. And I said, I know it's going to sound weird, I'm looking for somebody called Charles Kim Seymour, Colonel Kim Seymour. She looked at me very oddly, and she went, are you a member of the family? I said, I'm not, no, I'm thinking about writing a comic book about his life. He was a hero in World War II. She went, I'm not supposed to tell you this. So, well, where is it? She said, he's in Port Souls. You can go, but there's no marker on him, right? I said, well, how do I know he's in the grave? She went into the little library, she pulled out this big leather-bound book with 1943 on it. And she flipped through this book, and there is the great registration with his name in the grave. However, it's owned by a woman. It literally, the grave, the name on the grave is a woman's name. And it's got, though, however, occupant Charles Seymour in the grave. So they buried him under a woman's name in secret, so that nobody would know where he actually was. So I went and I went to the thing, I did my little thing, saying, well, thank you, I don't know where this is going. I don't know where this is ending, leave on, leave it, and I went back to the woman, I thanked her, said, thank you very much indeed. I said, is there any chance I could get a copy of that? She went, well, you're not a member of the family. I said, I know. I said, well, it's the only proof I'm ever going to have. And she copied it for me. So I have an actual grave registration copy of the actual thing with his name in it, with a woman's name, and about 3 addresses where she said she was staying, where one in London, one in Edinburgh, one in the middle of World War II. So she was staying all over, whoever this was, whoever did this, there's 3 different addresses, they're all crossed out, but the woman's name is still at the top to this day. And I've got it, and out of respect for the family, I've never said the name of the woman that is buried under, but that's how it all started. And I started to think, well, this was the origin of the story.
Well, I'm curious to ask you on this. What percentage, then, of the story is based on the fact there, with maybe names changing, and what is fiction?
Well,
if you can say.
no, I can't. And again, as I told you before, I actually got pulled by my people that I used to work for, and they said, you are very close to the line here with this, because the only thing that saved me was I wrote it as a work of fiction. But actually, for instance, the group that he's a member of, 14 Intelligence Company, existed up until quite recently. They changed the name, it's something else now. So the names have been changed. One of the guys who's in it, who's still alive, is a friend of mine, was one of the people that was actually brought in by the Ministry of Defence to do the psychic tests. He's still alive, but he's still a friend of mine, he's still on Facebook, and he was one of the people who told me how they tested people to detect, like they did in America, they tested the when they thought had psychic So the names are in there, I just changed the names. And some of the stuff like the bell, obviously is based on the Nazi bell, the anti-gravity thing that they
I know that. Yeah. A lot of this interact, like the Nazi, everything he talked about on that, especially with the Nazi bell, I love researching stuff. Some of it's far-fetched stuff, but it's based also on something that might be real, or there might be pictures of. You'd be amazed at what you find about the Nazi bell.
The bell.
And the interesting thing about what he just brought into the case of this, all this started back, what, 1930s?
It started in the 30s.
1930s. But it's very relevant to that being continued processes today that are being used that no one talks about. So it's considered conspiracy theory, but that's sometimes a thing used to cover up what might be really happening.
Correct. It's all part of the perception operation. Are everybody aware of the Tic Tac stories about the pilot seeing the Tic Tac same thing?
Like the UFOs.
Yeah, the UFO.
Oh, you mean candy? We have a candy. It's called Tic Tac as well, and it's the same shape as the UFOs.
But is it a UFO? Or is it something we possibly are already flying and have been since the 90s? I happen to know for a fact, without getting myself in trouble, in the 90s when I was involved, I became aware of craft that we are flying, which is certainly 30 to 50 years in front of what anybody thinks is physically possible. But they are doing it, they're flying stuff. And so I can't be specific about how I know that, but I know it is a fact. So there's things up there that we have not seen yet, like the stealth fighter was kept secret for almost 30 years, it existed, but nobody ever seen it until you saw it, the S-117. So there is stuff up there, trust me, that people are going to go, how does that work?
But it's from Earth. It's technology that we created, or we like reverse engineer it.
Well, let me put up, that's the different issue. Reverse engineering is a different issue. But
I'm a huge fan of aliens.
Think about this for a second. Just ask me this question. San Diego is one of the trident nuclear submarine bases in America, there's two. And there's one actually in the Indian Ocean, which is actually owned by the Brits, but we lease it to America. It's one of the most secret bases on the face of the planet. But the other place is in San Diego, where America's trident submarines are. That stretch of water, where Catalina Island is one of the most monitored trade areas on the face of the planet. They have, I can talk about this because everybody knows about this now. The SOSUS NET, what's called the Sound Underwater Surveillance System, is a network of underwater acoustic microphones that listens to everything that's underneath the ocean. Submarines, in Cold War technology, they literally have laced the oceans with acoustic microphones that are so sensitive they can tell you what boat, because of the way the propeller is with water, they can tell you what boat it is from the acoustic signature of the boat. Now, not only do they have SOSUS nets off the coast of San Diego, they've got satellites, they've got radar, they've got everything you can sonar, they've got everything. So you're telling me, in a trading area off the coast of America, UFOs that can fly in and go underwater are just coming out, they don't know what they are? Come on now.
Okay, what you didn't know about Mark, we know about all the acting stuff he's done and all, but he's also a 007 agent.
Yeah, he told me yesterday.
Or 00 something, what would you be?
I have a license to drink.
That being said,
00 shots of vodka, that's about
the stuff he told you earlier where he said that he won't be able to tell you in person, probably if you bring him some drinks today, by the end of the day, you never know.
So,
that was going to be my next question. If he like asked you to work with him, or did he force you?
No. Okay, on how we even got together on this. Mike Grell, who's a dear friend of both of ours, who's an amazing talent, is a dear friend of mine, dear friend of his. He had done work on the series, but could not complete it due to other things coming up, other projects, and conflicting interests. But he did have layouts, rough pencil layouts. Remember what I mentioned earlier about I take the story, the script, and I turn it into the pictures to make sure, like the directing? He had part of that done. And then I was brought in to go ahead and finish the process on about like 10 pages of it for the book. And then I'm going to be also the artist to do finishes with my girl. Our styles are almost analogous to one another in that I learned as a kid. He was one of my favorite artists as a kid. I can't tell Mike this in front of him because he'd be like, oh God, I'm old. Yes, Mike, you are old. I am too. So, but that's how I got brought in, because I can actually work with Mike and replicate a bit of his style. Never can be as good as Mike Grell, but I'll be faithful to this because also I talked to Mark about it. I'm into this subject matter. I mean, this is, I'm into this.
The other reason that Mike never finished it, did he tell you why we never finished it?
Was it money? Did the CIA approach it?
The company was wiped out. They shut down the company.
Okay.
And so we never finished. That's why it was only halfway through.
Which publisher did it?
It was with Comic Books, and I won't go into the whole history and what happened.
You won't say which one.
Rumor, as I've been told now, was that the money that was involved with that suddenly dropped out. Literally just went gone.
Yeah.
And so to this day, the rumor is that somebody went, not that. But that was a while ago. So now things are being, because now the Pentagon has admitted there's things flying. They're admitted that they're actually trying to make what's called synthetic telepathy. I'm not making this up, this is absolutely scientific fact. They are trying to create a way that your brain can interact with the computer without having a keyboard, right? By the reading your brainwaves. So this is already happening, right? When I was writing what's in the Pilgrim, what I wrote in the Pilgrim was already being considered theoretically possible, but it hadn't actually been done yet. The fact was they've been working on it for 30 years. So now, this is what they call synthetic telepathy, is going to be at some point a reality. You will think something like, turn the bathroom light on, and it will move.
You've probably been at a bar before, and you're having some drinks, and all of a sudden you did something really stupid. It might be somebody at the bar looked at you, and they did that, and they made you do that. It's just letting you know. You're from Belgium, so you probably drank some beer. So
Yeah, it is a
okay,
bit.
all right.
Next time I'm in the bar and I'm so drinking, I piss myself.
You
I
blame
can tell my wife it was someone else.
It was someone else made me do it. Oh, I don't know if that will help you or not. Someone else made me do that. No.
So we got some Pilgrims back there, the latest rendition of it happened. We got some Pilgrims left.
Is it already, is it done?
This is the first third of the original book, and now we're going to do the next middle third and the next
It's
third.
not completed.
It's
Like,
not
this is a
completed.
big chunk of it, and it's a really good story, and it's got a lot of background also. And
And the artwork by this fellow, by the way, is stunning. You picked up Mike's mantle and you've been with it, so you've done so. And Mike is a very close friend of mine, and Mike recommended you, and when I saw what you did, I went, holy crap, that is absolutely stunning work. So you picked up the mantle and you carried it forward with that.
so that or it's going to be, damn, Mike's eyes are going, yeah, okay, yeah, whatever, Mike. But no, thank you so much. Thank you for that.
It's truly
How does that work for you? Like, you get the script, of course you've already drawn some images from Mike then, but what did you do with it then? It's like something in your brain, you look at it and it happens, or?
That's a really good question. Mike already had like some roughs, but I still needed to go through the script to find out what was going on. There's cases where you got to make sure that the right character is talking from paced from left to right, so the balloons will follow in suit what they need to be. So I need to also read the script as well to make sure it's a double checking to make sure everything is true to what it needs to be. I've been doing this for so many years. I know how the mistakes can be made. I know how to rectify them before it gets to print, if I can. There was one particular panel that I realized was flipped from what everything was originally done. The people are laying in these tube-like thing in the bell in order, and the order had flipped. So I flipped it digitally to make sure it worked with the proper order. Things like that. So there's a lot of checks and balances. Whereas like in a movie production, you'd have post-production and all these people are involved, and while on set, they're making sure that if he had a scar on this side, that next time they're shooting him, the scar is in the same place. I'm that person kind of doing that. The colorist does that. Editor gives it a final overview. It's a lot more to doing comics than people think, if they're done properly. And there's historic stuff in this. This goes back in time. So Mike, I'm sure, went through and I had referenced material from World War II. And I wanted to make sure I got it as right as possible, because somebody might be a nerd like me that knows what a particular gun looks like, or a particular this. And so I want to try to get it right if I can.
I mean,
yes, I'm a nerd.
Yeah, we all are, so don't worry about it. But you live in Antwerp now, you live in Belgium. Do you like notice like a difference? Because I kind of grew up with a lot of like the Belgian and the French comics.
Well, like Siska and Wiska. A good friend of mine out there introduced me to Siska and Wiska, things like that. Yes.
How do you see those comics?
Oh, they're wonderful.
It's a real other style, right?
It is, but we had that in the newspaper strips. We had like Blondie that was like a Siska and Wiska style, like the that look. We had Popeye, olive oil Popeye and all that, and that was done in the cartoons. And we had that existed in the newspaper strips. I came out of a generation where like I wanted to do horror and science fiction. Again, everything that's in that he's doing, written, I love horror and science fiction. It's got horror, it's got all.
But his stories aren't science fiction. It's
reality. Yeah. I think there's, that's why I asked earlier, how much fact is there in there? He still
wanted to make sure.
And you notice how he went around that answer a little bit.
He doesn't want to tell us.
But I came into the business during the superhero era. I got my work doing things like Batman, X-Men. Those characters were what really paid the bills, and I enjoyed. I looked at the Hulk when I worked at it as a science fiction. He's a monster. He's a man that turns into a monster. That was science fiction. So, yeah, I love the comics that are here because they are different. I just got to learn to read them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
friends of mine in the audience would pick at me and say the same thing.
You have to show what Yola can do.
I'm working on it. I got to get an English edition and a Dutch edition so I can just kind of compare when I have time. Have a few Belgian beers while I'm doing it. Maybe a Jupiler or something, I don't know.
Oh my.
Did you guys have some Belgian beers?
Oh sure, that's nice.
I've had about I've had one or two. I know how to ask for it.
That's beach.
Yeah. But I do it like this because I don't know how to say for the long. If somebody told me a large one's like that, or pinch it, and I go.
Yeah, we have 25.
And if they ask me funny, I go like, look at me.
Make it awfully.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah. Are there some questions from the audience maybe about Pilgrim?
Come on, ask questions.
No, we're going to ask you questions, you see. I think that's more interesting than to ask you questions.
Ask him if he is a real 00 agent. I'm asking you, are you a 00? I think you are.
Well,
well. If I tell you, I gotta kill you.
I don't know, he might choke you with his watch or something.
no, it's the whole story about Fleming being a naval intelligence is true. So Fleming was an intelligence agent. He worked for. If you go and see the film Mincemeat, Operation Mincemeat, Fleming's in that. And so there's a lot of stuff that Fleming wrote in the actual original modern books, which again is true. For instance, the head of MI6 during the Second World War was a man called Sir Stuart Menzies. So M is Sir Stuart Menzies. So there's a lot of stuff in the book if you don't know what you're looking at. But for instance, Q, the Q department, I've been to the Q department, right? I know they exist and I know where they are and I know what they do. So there is an absolute real department that deals with making not just, trick watches and stuff like that. They make hidden firearms and all kinds of stuff. And most of them started with doing it during the Special Operations Executive. So
I hate to interrupt, but how did you go back there to see them?
It's a long story.
I only saw 007 ever go back there when he was being given a wristwatch.
Yeah, no,
Do you have one?
there's an entire place called the Patent Room. It's now removed to Nottingham. And the Patent Room has every firearm that's ever been made.
Oh, patents.
Right? Because it's the patents to the weapons. So they have copies of everything. And we were expected to go to understand, to pick up any weapon that had ever been made, in any situation and use it. So whether it was an AK-47 or a Makarov or a Well-Rod or any other weapon that had ever been made, we had to go and train to pick it up and use it, because we might be in a situation where we didn't have a weapon, or we might be in a hostile environment, so we had to know how to use a Russian weapon or whatever, Chinese weapon, whatever. So they have
who you're fighting, and to know who you are fighting against.
Well, yeah, a lot of times it was very confusing, particularly in Africa.
It still sounds like 007.
Well, they made things like, for instance, in one of the films, he fires a thing out of his wrist. There was a real weapon that was designed like that, and it straps to your wrist.
Well, no, years ago you could buy a gun on your ring. I mean, back in the Wild West, they would have little ring guns.
Pinky ring guns.
And they weren't useless as, I'm going to give you guys an American term. They were useless as tits on a bowl.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
This was like it was strapped on your wristwatch, and you had a little switch that you could actually dangle down. And you had to be careful to get your wrist out of the way so you didn't blow your hand off. But the idea was that if you got caught, you went, oh, excuse me, you walk away. And it didn't matter, it was a small round, but it was enough to distract the person so you could get out. So all of that stuff, all the stuff you see in the films, some of it is weird beyond understanding, but a lot of it is based on reality of what they came up with. So there's a lot of history there. For instance, Boothroyd, Major Boothroyd, who was in the book, in one of the Bond books, in several Bond books, actually really existed. He was the man that took away James Bond's Beretta and gave him a one for the BBK. And he says that's a lady's gun. He takes away the Beretta. Major Boothroyd actually existed. A real person. Historical figure.
I mean, yeah, the best stories are the ones you can't make up.
Well, right, and this is exactly an example of why detail, even when I'm drawing a comic book, you think, well, make it any. This is why I can't do that and don't do that. That kind of detail, and you know it's coming from a source that's like, hey, I know what's going on here. I'm going to research like crazy, or call Mark and say, Mark, you have pictures of this? He'll say, probably I do, but I'll have to kill you if I show you. But the point is that, no, but this is why details...
Our makers get that guy's looking at us like, don't tell them.
Have you got a question? Come on, let's go with a question, and then we'll
Who's got a question?
The answer is
don't mention 42.
I can't mention your strip life. I won't mention it. Nobody will know it, except Mark. He knows everything about us.
Yeah.
Well, you had a good night last night, didn't you?
What?
You had a good night last night, didn't you? Wait a minute. She was blonde.
Shit.
No, it's a beer. No, sorry, the beer was blonde.
Wait a minute, forget asking us
You were a
questions.
lot of blondes.
What did you do last night?
Well, actually,
Tell me.
there were a lot of blonde beers.
Okay.
Ask me a question about art. Come on. Somebody asked me about drawing. We all sat down there.
You in the back.
You in the back.
Oh, that one in the back, the redhead. No, she's really...
Do you have that effect on women normally, or is it just because she knows you will?
I somehow have not chased that woman away before, but that was the first time. Run! Any crazy questions for me?
Who's got crazy questions?
Never dated a porn star.
I'm not quite sure what that was, but it sounded like an offer to me.
Go ahead. She asked if I ever dated a porn star.
Yeah.
Was it you or?
Oh,
Well, actually,
I'm a gentleman. I'm not going to say that in public. Yes, no. I was a 007 agent, though.
Yes,
I actually have another question for you. Is it Stephen or Steve? Because I saw you have there's two.
Okay, now this is the fascinating part. Okay, yeah. Okay, social media changed the landscape of everything as far as how you promote yourself. Used to be the simpler the name was, I'm Steve Scott. Everybody calls me Steve or Steve Scott. Now my girlfriend who you just saw is Steven. All my friends are Steven. Well, they call me other things as well too, but that's a whole different thing. But when you get into social media and you have the name Steve Scott, look it up. It may as well be John Smith. In the state, John Smith is a typical. So no, I have to go by my real full Stephen B. Scott. Otherwise, if you look me up, that's all you're going to find is me. But if you look up Steve Scott, there's a millionaire, there's a sprinter. I'm not the sprinter. And I draw comics, so I'm also not the millionaire either. So that's the reason behind that. My friends here call me Steven, and or like I said, other things, all very appropriate to knowing me. But yeah, that's it.
Okay. I just wondered because I looked up Steven B. Scott and found you.
You can call me Steven for now, but you can be very creative later because I'm sure we'll hang out again sometime. Then you can call me all the other things.
What can I call you, B?
They can give you ideas. They can all give you ideas.
All right. Does anybody still have a question? Fantastic gentleman.
Okay.
But tell you, you got a chance here. You know it. What do you want? I know, yeah. There's nothing, there's a group over there that knows everything. Anyway, they're the ones that call me those things.
Well, okay, then I'll just
Onwards real quick. Anybody here read comics at all? Anybody here pick up comics? Awesome. I mean, in any kind of comics, meaning like, there should be no separation between saying, well, it's manga, well, it's Dutch, well, it's Belgian. Comics are comics, and if you're reading comics, have fun with it and enjoy it. I got into it doing superhero comics, but that was not necessarily comics for me. I enjoyed horror, like the Warren magazines and horror, but the manga is killing it right now in a good kind of way. Enjoy everything. That's all I want to say.
I think that's a really good message because that it is true what you say.
Read more comics.
Read them all, and never stop reading.
In multiple languages if you can.
All right.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
No, thank you,
and
guys.
thank you to Comic Con. Everybody's been well organised. They've done a fantastic job. It's been a real company.
Thank you very much for joining us today. It was great seeing you guys today and yesterday. And I'd say give them a big round of applause. And go visit them. And read the book. Stephen B. Scott, Mark Ryan.
Hey, you're a blast. I want you to do an English set at the Joker one day.
All right, I'll do it. Yeah.
Contact me ahead of time. Not this whole set, just like a 5-minute.
Yeah, like I'll try.
See, this is from my stupid American friend.